The following program is a work of broadcast students from the British Columbia Institute of Technology. BCIT Magazine features news stories from around the Lower Mainland over the past week. Responsibility for the content of the show rests completely with the students and their BCIT instructors.
Today on BCIT Magazine. Prison construction in Surrey has some protesters upset.
NDP leadership candidate unveils an affordable housing policy for 2015.
And land-based parasites are invading the seas.
Good afternoon and welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Rafferty Baker.
And I'm Martin McMahon.
BC's Finance Minister Kevin Falcon has tabled a new budget for 2013 and 2014. This has been considered one of the safest since the early 1980s. Tax credits will be given to first-time buyers of new homes and renovations for senior homes. The public will end up paying 4% more for medical service premiums. Economics instructor Ron Carell says there will also be an impact on students.
I was actually quite encouraged that they're not planning on any cuts to either the K-12 system or the post-secondary system in gross terms. It appears that they may not keep up funding at the rate of inflation, so it is overall probably relatively neutral from a student perspective. We'll see what happens to tuition fees, which I suspect is always of interest to students. Again, it looks like they're not actually cutting dollars, but they may not be increasing funding enough to keep up with inflation, so it may lead to small, anyway, tuition increases in and of itself. But so far we haven't seen any word on that particular item. There's some talk about trying to find internal efficiencies. It's been tried before, and we'll see where it actually goes. There's always something, but whether it's substantial, we have yet to see.
And for a look at how students are reacting to the budget, we head to the halls of BCIT to get one student's perspective on what was announced. BCIT business student Tyler Ludlow says the budget is just a reminder of the tough economic times we're in.
We are entering the age of austerity. We might even be in the age of austerity for some countries. But yeah, it totally makes sense why Christy Clark is presenting this.
For Ludlow, one of the biggest issues with the budget is the cuts to post-secondary institutions. Falcon's budget has $20 million less going to post-secondary next year and another $50 million cut the year after that. He says class sizes shouldn't be affected, but that executive travel and cuts to support staff will make up the difference.
It wouldn't be as fulfilling of an experience if we didn't have the support staff. But again, the age of austerity is coming. It's one of the facts of life that everyone's going to be facing.
MSP premiums will jump 4%. That means individual British Columbians who now pay $64 a month will pay $66.50. But low-income people like Ludlow will be spared, as they don't pay MSP.
With the amount of people retiring and the healthcare costs expected to skyrocket, we are going to have to get taxed on that more at the end of the day. And I mean, it'll be pulled more from people who can't afford it, so it's going to be trickling down to the people who can't afford it, which is good in that sense at least.
And the carbon tax will be under review after one more scheduled increase this summer. The tax will go from 6.39 cents a litre to 7.67 cents a litre. But Ludlow says he doesn't mind the minor tax hike.
I don't currently drive that much. It will be something that I will eventually have to pay, but again, it's an environmental initiative. It makes sense why they're doing it, and it is encourage cutting down on consumption of oil and driving and all that, and encourages public transit, biking and walking. So that I'm fine with too.
One highlight grabbing Ludlow's attention is the tax credit for first-time buyers of new homes. It's a 5% credit, up to $10,000 and restricted to new homes.
The $10,000 housing credit, it does benefit people like me who are looking to buy a house eventually, and especially in the Vancouver market, which, as we all know, is incredibly expensive. It is some more incentivization to finally get into that market. It's got somewhat of a negative impact on students. It's not catastrophic. It's just something they're going to have to deal with. It could be worse, but I mean, it's with the amount we pay for school and the amount we get out of school in British Columbia is still a lot better than most places in the world.
Teachers are continuing their fight across the province to reach a deal on various issues with the government. Members of the Burnaby Teachers Association waved to drivers in the rain, holding yellow billboards explaining how the government has not listened to their requests. The peaceful protest happened at the corner of North Road and Semerin Street in Burnaby. BTA's president says the drop in education money needs to stop.
When you see a drop from 26% of the gross domestic product being invested in education 10 to 15 years ago to 15% now, you have to start wondering, where has that money gone? Why has public education become such a low priority for this government? Why do we pay the taxes that we pay if our public services are not funded properly?
This is the second time the Burnaby Teachers Association has held a rally in recent weeks. They expect to continue protesting until teachers and the government reach an agreement.
A new prison the provincial government is building in Surrey has sparked some controversy. My co-host Martin McMahon went to the protest to find out why people do not want new prisons in our province.
Protesters from the Vancouver area network of drug users converged on the construction site of a new remand centre being built in Surrey by the provincial government.
We're here at the site of a new large-scale private remand centre that's being built by the BC Liberals. So we're protesting that the fact that the BC Liberals and the Christy Clark government are pouring money into expanding prisons in BC at a time when we know the crime rate is going down. That there are other priorities like housing and education and daycare that communities actually need. So they're making a massive $330 million investment in building these big prisons, and we're saying that actually we would get we should be spending that money on housing. We need housing now.
Some protesters say the construction of a for-profit corrections facility at a time with a shortage of affordable housing is hard to justify.
Now we have no social safety net, basically they're dismantling it, and we're building for-profit prisons, which puts a whole new spin on justice. There will be companies with shareholders who will benefit from having more stringent laws that capture more and more people in jail.
The provincial government was not available to comment on the concerns of protesters this Tuesday, but regardless of whether or not taxpayers are in favor of the new corrections facilities, this building will cost $90 million and BC will spend $185 million building new prisons throughout BC. Martin McMahon in Surrey for BCIT Magazine.
Bill C-30, or the Protecting Children from Internet Predators Act, has stirred up a lot of controversy. As my co-anchor Rafferty Baker reports, Canada's police chiefs are now throwing their support behind the bill.
The Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police came out to endorse Bill C-30, the controversial new online surveillance law. Vancouver Deputy Chief Warren Lemke says that police need to keep up with changes in technology.
We believe the new legislation will assist the police with the necessary tools to investigate crimes while balancing, if not strengthening, the privacy rights for Canadians through the addition of oversight not currently in place.
But some online activity wouldn't require a warrant to investigate under the new legislation. That means in some cases, police would be charged with deciding what they can do instead of a judge.
Police forces in this country aren't having a problem saying to Canadians, trust us. There's a tremendous amount of accountability, judicial accountability. Every province in this country right now has independent civilian oversight of police.
But some, including Lindsay Pinto, communications manager for openmedia.ca, say that Canadians shouldn't have to trust the police.
The thing is about codifying things in law is that you don't want a trust us kind of situation. You want measures in our laws that make sure that our rights and freedoms, as guaranteed by the Charter, are going to be protected.
And Pinto does agree that laws ought to be updated to keep up with technology.
We definitely want to make sure that the police are able to catch cyber criminals, and we don't disagree with that. It's the way that they're going about it that's incorrect.
While Canadians debate the benefits of the new legislation online, police departments are jumping into the fray and throwing their support behind the act. Rafferty Baker in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine. NDP Deputy Leader Thomas Mulcair was in town this past week to discuss his proposed affordable housing policy.
federal government has simply abandoned the issue of housing across Canada. That's why there's such a crying need. You know, we're one of the wealthiest countries in the world, yet we still have lots of people who are not able to find decent, affordable housing. Across Canada right now, we're several 100,000 housing units shy of what we need to be able to have everyone in affordable housing. The needs are greatest here in areas like Vancouver, and the number one thing is we have to build more homes for more people. We've got to get creative about the solutions. We can't be dogmatic about it. We have to let all sectors of the economy play a role. Here in Vancouver, the Urban Development Institute has done some great studies. I mean, there's a lot of red tape involved in getting approvals for housing and for rental units. I think that if we make it a priority to build more rental units, we'll find the way. And if we're creative with regard to the financing, the federal government can play a very active role.
Affordable housing doesn't just affect the homeless. These soon-to-be young professionals are uncertain if home ownership will ever be within their reach.
As a student, no, there is not enough affordable houses. Just with the way the economy is and the rising prices for houses, I do not think so.
I think probably the hardest part would be coming up with a down payment. I don't think Canadians are saving as much these days, so it would probably take me 10, 15 years to save up the down payment that it would require to buy a house in Vancouver.
I think I'm going to be renting for a while, and I think with how high renting is in Vancouver, being able to save up for a down payment is going to take a long time and a lot of effort. I would probably move out of the city before I could afford a place here.
Vancouver is the case study across Canada of housing that has simply gone through the roof, unaffordable for more and more people. And you know, as young people absorb the biggest debts that we're leaving ecologically and economically, don't forget that young people today finishing with a bachelor's degree in Canada are on average finishing with $35,000 in debt. So when are they ever going to be able to afford to purchase something for themselves? We're one of the richest countries in the world. We've just not taken care of the housing issue properly, and that's what the NDP government would propose to do when we get elected in 2015.
For some of Vancouver's less fortunate, these changes may come too late, if at all. Braden Oates in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
Coming up next on BCIT Magazine, the idea of legalizing marijuana is back in the minds of Vancouverites.
And abandoning foreign pets could do more damage to the local ecosystem than you think. Tape is dead. Tape is dead. Tape is dead. Tape is dead.
The prime suspect accused in an alleged gang rape has had the charges against him stayed. The incident happened nearly 2 years ago at a rave in Pitt Meadows. In a rare press conference, the alleged victim and her father spoke to the media, pleading for anyone with information to come forward and speak to the police. Media Relations Officer Sergeant Peter Thiessen was firm when he reiterated that the images and evidence investigators have leave them with no doubt as to what happened to the young woman.
I can assure you, knowing the content of these photos, it was not exaggerated what happened to this girl. Absolutely not. And I would say that if anybody heard the details of what this girl experienced, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
After 4 former attorneys general announced their support for the legalization of marijuana in BC, the issue is back at the forefront of people's minds. Braden Oates reports.
The legalization of marijuana has long been debated in Vancouver. I talked to residents of the city to find out public opinion.
Well, I think it's probably no more harmful than alcohol, and it's just an opportunity for governments to be able to raise taxes and regulate it in a way that they can't currently regulate it, decrease crime.
I think it should be decriminalized. I think that if the government controlled the supply, then perhaps there would be less of a criminal element to it. And
marijuana can never be legalized in the province of BC because to legalize it, it's a federal thing. So the province of British Columbia can never have the rights to legalize it.
I think there's so much money spent on the criminal enforcement of something which is just a social drug.
So I think to be, giving people criminal records for possession of a little bit of weed, I mean, it's a bit ridiculous.
The opinion on the streets were reverberated loudly at Mark Emery's cannabis culture headquarters.
If BC was legalizing marijuana, logically you would think that the rest of the country is too. It's not a dangerous substance to prohibit. For one thing, it's certainly a lot less dangerous than alcohol, tobacco, even coffee for that matter. Well, from the taxpayer's point of view, the economic benefits would the stopping of the continued waste of enforcing these laws. If the police are spending the biggest majority of their time enforcing cannabis laws, then if you take that out of the equation, that's a great deal of money saved right there.
With marijuana laws so relaxed in Vancouver, many hope the government will listen to the calls for legalization. Braden Notes in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
An energy specialist here at BCIT is getting attention from BC Hydro. Andrea Linsky is a finalist in a video contest focusing on conserving energy. She went to trades buildings and turned the heat down by a few degrees.
And we saw a phenomenal difference. So the black one is what you actually were using for natural gas, and this is what it's predicting you should use based on the outside temperature.
Before changes were made, trade students would open these large bay doors to cool off. They didn't realize the shop's heaters kept running, creating a waste of energy. Andrea's job is not done yet. She continues to find different solutions to different temperature problems on campus.
Everybody's body is a little bit different and everyone reacts to their environment a little bit differently. So maybe if you happen to be cold in your building, maybe the best way to go about it is to put on a sweater rather than asking people to turn up the temperature.
Scientists have discovered an alarming statistic about sick marine life. As I discovered, a high amount of deadly pathogens found in land-based animals are being transmitted to sea life. Dr. Andrew Treitz is a UBC professor and director of the Marine Mammal Research Unit at the university. He says parasites and deadly pathogens from land-based animals have now been found infecting surprising amounts of sea mammals. And often enough, humans are to blame.
Usually when I think about how healthy the oceans are, I always think about plastic in the ocean, organochlorides. I never thought before about disease as being a big factor, or the fact that we are causing diseases and are essentially making our marine mammals sick and even killing them. People in BC are keyed into this and they're noticing it and they report it. Everything from dead sea otters, dead whales, dead dolphins, dead seals and sea lions.
Martin Helena is the staff veterinarian at the Vancouver Aquarium. While lots of his work is done on healthy animals, he doesn't downplay the severity of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, you get that sort of, wow, okay, now it's in the marine environment. Well, what does that mean? Like, how bad can this get? What else can get affected?
He's tracking some of these pathogens in live sea animals.
We have the ability to take blood samples from animals that come into our center and screen them for exposure to different organisms.
Most of these captive animals at the Vancouver Aquarium are healthy, but in the wild it's a different story.
How do these animals get in contact with organisms that we normally associate with people or with the terrestrial environment?
And while the problem is just beginning to be understood, the root causes still aren't clear, and neither is the solution.
I'm not really certain exactly what can be done. I think some of these are more at a municipal or a provincial government level where you're hardscaping a lot of the areas, like with urban development, a lot of these areas where you may have wetland marshes that would typically filter out some of these agents.
Number one, the most important thing is how essential it is for biomonitoring to keep going out there and sampling and increasing our sample size and increasing our understanding.
These scientists say one of the best things folks can do to help out is to report stranded or dead marine mammals washed up on shore. People should contact the Department of Fisheries and Oceans if any animals are found. Rafferty Baker in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
Coming up next on BCIT Magazine, the Reptile Guy has some new cold-blooded friends.
And Matthew Vandeventer tells us what internet sensations are taking over the web.
Tape is dead.
Listen to some live music, taste some whiskey, and enjoy St. Patrick's Day Parade at Vancouver's annual Celtic Fest. Celtic Fest starts on March the 10th and runs for 1 week. Some events need tickets while others are free. Visit CelticFestVancouver.com for more information. Explore BC's largest travel show on March 3rd and 4th at the Vancouver Convention Centre. The Outdoor Adventure and Travel Show will feature sales on camping gear, a travel photography demonstration, and even a whitewater pool demonstrating kayaks. Visit outdooradventuretravel.show.ca for more information. Put an end to bullying by wearing pink. Pink Shirt Day is happening once again this year. Encourage your friends and family to wear pink to commit to an anti-bullying lifestyle. Pink Shirt Day happens all day on February 29th. And that was your community calendar. I'm Casey Pitts.
14 turtles from the southern United States were recently found in Surrey. And as my co-anchor Martin McMahon reports, abandoning foreign pets can have an impact on the local ecosystem.
It's very interesting. A turtle. It may seem harmless enough, but this red-eared slider is an invasive species. This conservation biologist says abandoned pets can put native animal populations at risk.
Invasive species are species that don't naturally occur here, so they were brought in by humans. Usually it's from the pet trade, and inadvertently they get released into the wild, and they basically compete with our native species.
So when 14 red-eared sliders were found in a storm reservoir by an environmental surveyor last week, who did he call? The Reptile Guy, of course. Mike Hopcraft takes in abandoned pets who are often released into the wild and tries to find new homes for them.
All right. They were working on a pond, some big stormwater reservoir, detention pond, and they drained it because they needed to do some maintenance on it. And when they drained it, they actually found a bunch of turtles in the bottom of it. So he called me because he realized that they're an invasive species; they shouldn't be out here. So instead of just trying to relocate them to another pond, he actually called me to try to see if we can find homes for them. So we went out and picked them up that night, and now we've got 14 turtles that need homes.
Hopcraft says turtles are particularly vulnerable.
And that's where we get the problem, because again, people get them when they're about that big because they're cute and cheap and easy to look after, but when they start getting this big and bigger, it's hard to find a tank that's actually, suitable for one this size.
Ultimately, no matter what pet you decide to get, it's best to do your research before buying one. Martin McMahon in Aldergrove for BCIT Magazine. And in sports news, an ESPN sports anchor has apologized after making a racial remark about basketball player Jeremy Lin in an online article on the station's website. Matt Bretos received a work suspension and apologized to fans via Twitter.
The NHL trade deadline is next Monday as teams beef up for the postseason. Top of everyone's list is Columbus forward Rick Nash, who looks to find his way onto a playoff team's roster.
BCIT's culture critic is back with another segment of Do You Know What I Mean? Matthew Vandeventer has the latest on internet culture and some sweet videos from around the world.
Hi there, and welcome to Do You Know What I Meme? Today we look at one of the latest humor memes based off of sociological stereotypes. It is known as the What I Actually Do meme. A friend just recently posted an example of this meme onto my Facebook timeline. Even though this picture is aimed at journalists, this meme or template is open to a myriad of various professions, including musicians, photographers, and even IT folk. Essentially, this meme runs through a series of perspectives that depicts an interpretation of that profession. The perspectives usually range from superhero status to juvenile behavior, but the punchline always lies with what I actually do, and that's usually nothing much. It is one of the latest memes to invade the social networks, and with a quick Google search, you can even find one that hits close to home. Taking a look across the Atlantic, Europe has been dealing with some very, very cold temperatures. But it's not all bad, because when the warm weather is away, people still manage to play. It was cold enough in the Dutch lowlands for the canals to freeze over in Amsterdam. People laced up their skates and took to the ice for some fun and games. Meanwhile, across the continent, Romanians have their own idea of fun. 3 dudes on a sleigh? Maybe not the best idea. Luckily, no one was hurt. It seems as though Athens is the only place not affected by the cold. In fact, things are heating up in the Greek capital as protesters riot over the ongoing austerity measures. For Do You Know What I Meme? I'm Matthew Vandeventer.
In entertainment news, actress Lindsay Lohan is making her return to the spotlight. She'll be hosting Saturday Night Live on March 3rd. This is her 3rd time hosting the comedy show. She previously was on SNL in 2006 and also in 2004 when she was only 17 years old.
If you have any questions or comments regarding this program, please visit us online at bcitbroadcastnews.ca or bcit-broadcast.com.
I'm Rafferty Baker.
And I'm Martin McMahon. And that's today's BCIT Magazine.
Thanks for watching.